everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. I want to remind everybody, hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And there's a PayPal link down there for anybody that wants to share some love. Always appreciated. StreamYard link is there for anybody who wants to join us. And we've got John with us again tonight. How you doing tonight, John?
Good. How you doing, Keith?
Good, good, good.
Yeah.
Had to take a couple extra days there. We got things going on here, but hopefully that's resolved and we can get going again. And if you guys remember the last video I did, we were speaking about the birth certificate standards and how it's an impossibility. And one of the things we're going to talk about tonight, I showed you the list of people that I'm going to be giving notice to as far as it relates to all this. And so there's a lot of details involved, but the simplicity of it is, again, that the Health and Human Services is where it all starts, through the state's vital statistics jurisdiction at the local hospital. Now, the local hospital is known as a safe harbor, just like the police stations, fire departments, where you can drop off your children and have no consequences. That's truly what safe harbor means. The children are safe, supposedly, but you, the other party, the one that's abandoning, has no consequences. Remember, we talked about the use of the matrix, and the matrix is all the contract terms and conditions for the federal acquisitions regulations. So we're going to talk about this safe harbor exception, because it's not what a lot of people might think. You with us, John? This is one of those things. It's going to open some more eyes, I hope, because when we look at the terms and definitions of things that we think we know, they're not quite what you might think.
Yeah, I mean, it's really sensitive at the birth process. I mean, I think they might even have to be sworn in to take import data or export data. They're not even doing that, but you could talk about that maybe.
Well, yeah, we're gonna take a look at all this. So let's get into it. And what I've got here is this is just in my notepad, where I've got some notes in regards to the GSA Standard Form 95, which is the tort claim that I talked about, the IRS Form 3949A that I talked about, the 13909 that I talked about, and I've done a video or two on my restatement of separation as it regards to government property, records, and money. See, that's all theirs. So my tort claim is a bill for relief of the survivors of the Kenneth Conrady estate or the Mary Conrady estate. May apply to a certain number of willing current survivors and not more than 4 siblings. Equitable relief by reversion and merger of the estates with a will, living will, revocable trust. Then I've got this here. We'll open that up, because I believe that's where it states this. The mission of the Office of Inspector General, this is in relations to the Health and Human Services, mandated by Public Law 95-452, as amended by Public Law 100-504, is to protect the integrity of the Department of Health and Human Services programs, as well as the health and welfare of the beneficiaries served by them. And that's what we're talking about. See, they have a duty of protection already. This is an order of protection. Okay? Let's take a look at the next thing. And it is And this is just a plain Google search. And I'm just going to show you the top one here, but then we're going to get into it with the Office of Inspector General of Health and Human Services. It says, in healthcare, a safe harbor is a recognized exception to the anti-kickback statute. While the anti-kickback statute prohibits financial relationships between referral sources and business partners in general, safe harbors offer avenues to structure the exchange of remuneration in legal fashion. We're going to be talking about that, remuneration. And this is where I pulled up the site. And so let's take a look at it. And be sure to stop me anytime you have any questions, John.
Okay.
Safe harbor regulations. The safe harbor regulations describe various payment and business practices that, although they potentially implicate the federal anti-kickback statute, are not treated as offenses under the statute. The safe harbor regulations in their entirety can be found here. (2021) annual inflation updates to the annual cap on patient engagement tools and support under 42 CFR 1001-952 HH. Final rule 2020 revisions to safe harbors under the anti-kickback statute and civil monetary penalty. Rules regarding beneficiary inducements. So I want to ask you, if it's not disclosed directly that what you're in fact taking upon through the enumeration at birth is a granting or conferring of a nationality known as a United States citizenship as a portion of a business, and along with that fact that it's granted to the infant at birth, and then he undertakes the management of the estate upon age of majority when he signs that SS5, but notice it's a Social Security Administration, where in that particular document presumes a power of attorney for them to administrate the estate over your execution of documents, because they now classify you as a spendthrift, not knowing actually how to manage your estate. Otherwise, you'd have done it yourself. Study to shew thyself worthy and approved. Once you study and shew thyself worthy and approved to manage the estate, now you can start giving directives, and they have to take them because they're estate directives. So let's take a look at it.
Well, I don't like that already, Keith. Black's Law, spendthrift, one who spends money profusely. I didn't do that at birth, or even at 18, not yet.
Well, that's the presumption, though, because when you sign those documents, understand, people, we're under a millage rate. So when you sign those documents, they can put a value to it because that's a contractual obligation now, and they can sell that contract, and that's all they're doing. So they put a monetary value to the contract, which can only have been established by your signature. It's the only way it happens. Final rule, removal of safe harbor protection for rebates involving prescription pharmaceuticals and creation of new safe harbor protection for certain point of sale reductions in price on prescription pharmaceuticals and certain pharmacy benefit manager service fees. So what happened at birth? They get a kickback. Remember that vital statistics jurisdiction where they create that birth certificate and everything, and the county registrar buys it, places a value on it, shreds it, so people can invest in it. And shredding isn't what you think it is. They don't literally shred it. But what they do is they offer it up for investment. Best of my knowledge, anyway. Let's see. The following payment practices shall not be treated as a criminal offense under Section 1128B of the Act, and this is the Social Security Act. This is Title 42, Chapter 5, Subchapter B, Part 1001, and this is just directly from the government site instead of the Cornell site. The following payment practices shall not be treated, and shall not serve as the basis for an exclusion. Remember that affirmative action, diversity, equity, diversity, and inclusion. See, they're including you. And it's through an exclusion, and it's a state vital statistics jurisdiction that is exclusive to yourself. And it's based on investment interests as used in Section 1128B of the Act, remuneration. Remuneration does not include any payment that is a return on an investment interest. So an investment interest, you get a return on it, that is not remuneration. That is income, such as dividend or interest income. You have to make an investment first and then have an income. Otherwise, what you get paid down at the local employed shop, whether it be a car shop or McDonald's or whatever, you get a paycheck every week. That's remuneration. It's not income. Yeah, you report it as income because you're a good little resident and citizen of the United States, and you're going to report as a business made to an investor as long as all of the applicable standards are met within one of the following three categories. Now, the first one has 5 requirements. The second one has 8 requirements. And the third one has 8 requirements. And there are the following 8 standards. It's what we call requirement standards. Just like I remarked about with the birth certificate standards. It's an impossibility if it's not registered in the United States, because the United States doesn't have a birth registry. Then what? If within the previous fiscal year or previous 12-month period, the entity possesses more than $50 million in underappreciated net tangible assets related to the furnishing of health care items and services, all of the following 5 standards must be met. Everything extending from that enumeration at birth under the Health and Human Services is a Health and Human Services health care item or service. And it was all done by administration of the Social Security Administration. When you reached age of 18, age of majority, and undertook that responsibility to manage the estate without knowing it, without knowing what it was and how to do so. No one ever trained you. With respect to an investment interest that is an equity security, the equity security must be registered with the Securities Exchange Commission under 15 U.S.C. 781B or G. As we saw with the James A. Williams Trust. Remember that, John?
Yep, I do, Keith.
That was over $100 billion, certified by the Securities Exchange Commission. It's registered in the United States now.
Wow, so that was completed then. That's not a proposed idea. Wow.
Correct. That was, and granted, that was 2009 or 2015, something like that, 9 years ago, 15 years ago. But it shows you that it can be done, and through the research, which I'll show you again, we'll go through some public or some private laws, private relief law for the relief of James A. Williams. So what you're doing is you're establishing your trust, which is the law, and it's a private trust, so it's a private law. And it's got all the remedies already made out, because that's what you got to go through is equity. You got to understand how to form that trust and establish the connections with the fiduciaries and make those assignments. Just like a simple will and a living will, where you assign a power of attorney to somebody to take care of your medical matters, you're going to do the same thing with your financial matters at the local county, at the local credit union. You're going to do the same thing with your educational matters if you're going to sign your children up for them schools, or if you're going to do it through a state homeschooling. You can even hire a tutor that would be able to do the homeschooling better for you and have that done through the state, make sure they're licensed to properly teach your children. You can do all kinds of things. It's a matter of learning how to contract and doing it yourself. Again, that use of the matrix, use status. Goes on, it says the investment interest of an investor in a position to make or influence referrals to, furnish items or services to, or otherwise generate business for the entity must be obtained on terms. See, you're investing in it. Without you, no one else would invest in it. Without you and your mom, I should say, your mom and dad, when they invest in it by doing that stuff. Without proving the impossibility. I'm sorry. If you're going to grant a nationality or United States citizenship upon my child as a business opportunity, I'm sorry, we're going to train him up in the ways of the Lord first. And then when he's out upon the world, if he wants to provide his indentured servitude through you, then he may do so. He will either learn to follow the Lord's will or your will, and at a price equally available to the public when trading on a registered securities exchange, such as the New York Stock Exchange or the American Stock Exchange, or in accordance with the National Association of Securities Dealers automated quotation system. The entity or any investor must not market or furnish the entity's items or services or those of another entity as part of a cross-referral agreement to passive investors differently than to non-investors. This is where they get you. Mom is not an investor, is she? Can you answer that, John?
Well, yeah, you would think she would have to be.
Well, she's not actually given consideration as an investor, as a patient. See, the record doesn't identify her as an investor. Yet that's what it presumes, because they're allowed through a safe harbor exception to take that documentation that she signed and make it a commercial value and sell it without her knowing. Safe harbor. You going to keep going to those hospitals?
And there's no Series 7 broker either. So I'm just like, I mean, how could they attract investors when it
Well,
was
that's
never
where it
even?
goes down to the county registrar. He's the
Oh,
one
okay.
buying and selling them, right? The clerk is the one that issues the order to have it produced and sold. Judge is the one that makes the order. Clerk is the one that issues it. The register is the one that creates it. It's that register's signature on there. Along with someone else's at the county levels. I don't know yet. I would imagine it would be the head administrator, chief administrator, or the chief clerk, one of the two. Haven't figured that part out yet. At state level, it's the governor and the state's registrar.
Governor's supposed to do it, but his clerk, the probate registrar, actually does it.
Well, birth certificate, you get the governor and the registrars. You get both signatures.
Oh, I didn't know that. I should know that.
Yeah, that's why you got two seals. So, the next one, part 4, the entity or investor or other individual or entity acting on behalf of the entity or any investor in the entity must not loan funds to or guarantee a loan for an investor who is in a position to make or influence referrals to, furnish items or services to, or otherwise generate business for the entity if the investor uses any part of such loan to obtain the investment interest. Who can generate business for the entity? Just you. You're the one that generates all business for the entity, and that's that signature again. 5, the amount of payment to an investor in return for the investment interest must be directly proportional to the amount of the capital investment of that investor. What was the capital investment? That's what we're looking for. Enumeration at birth created an account. Each state has a burial trust. Let's see, Iowa Code Burial Trust.
You mean like a burial policy, like an insurance policy?
No. You remember the difference between an irrevocable trust and a revocable trust? An irrevocable trust is in perpetuity. Okay? And this is what I said. They create this burial trust through the state's vital statistics jurisdiction at birth so that in case the baby dies while it's in their care, even if it's health care, welfare, whatever, and not able to take care of itself despite being supported by mom and dad or not, the state has a trust that will provide burial for them. Burial account means an account established by a person with a financial institution for purpose of funding the future purchase of cemetery merchandise, funeral services, or a combination thereof without any related trust agreement. Burial trust fund means an irrevocable burial trust fund established by a person with a financial institution for the purpose of funding the future purchase of cemetery merchandise, funeral services, or a combination thereof, upon the death of the person named in the burial trust fund's records or related purchase agreement. Social Security Administration. Burial trust fund does not include or imply the existence of any oral or written purchase agreement for cemetery merchandise, funeral services, or combination thereof between the person and a seller. So understand, burial trust fund does not include or imply the existence of any oral or written purchase agreement. It doesn't have to. It's an undertaking. So the next two processes, like I said, are 8 standards. Says if the entity possesses investment interests that are held by either active or passive investors, all of the following 8 applicable standards must be met. Not more than 40% of the value of the investment interest of each class of investment interest may be held in the previous fiscal year, by investors who are in a position to make or influence referrals. So if we never possessed them, then that first one goes. The terms on which an investment interest is offered to a passive investor, if any, who is in a position to furnish items to otherwise generate business for the entity, be no different from the terms offered to passive investors. So if we're doing it, but we're not actually investing, but they get to invest in it, that's a passive investor, correct?
Yeah, I would say so.
Let's look it up. Also known as a buy and hold strategy, passive investing means purchasing a security to own it long term. So that passive investor wouldn't be until you find out the need for it and say, okay, I'm going to hold on to it for long term in escrow with the SEC or the Postal Service as certified by the SEC. Unlike active traders, passive investors do not seek to profit from short-term price fluctuations or market timing. I don't seek to profit at all. Not in that manner. And that's from Investopedia. Oops, wrong one. The terms on which an investment interest is offered to an investor who is in a position to make or influence referrals to or otherwise generate must not be related to the previous or expected volume of referrals, items, or services furnished, or the amount of business otherwise generated from that investor to the entity. So they're saying they're not going to take into consideration whether you volunteer. There is no requirement that a passive investor, if any, make referrals to, be in a position to make or influence referrals to, furnish items or services to, or otherwise generate business for the entity as a condition for remaining as an investor. The entity or any investor must not market or furnish the entity's items or services to passive investors differently than to non-investors. No more than 40% of the entity's gross revenue Again, that's an investment term, so that's an income, gross income, revenue. It went out and returned, revenued. Related to the furnishing of healthcare items and services in the previous fiscal year, previous 12-month period, may come from referrals. Again, these are voluntary actions or business otherwise generated from investors. The entity or any investor or other individual or entity acting on behalf of the entity or any investor in the entity. And so entity acting on behalf is the one that's giving the referrals on all those applications where you sign up for benefits and healthcare and this and that. Must not loan funds to guarantee a loan for an investor who is in a position to make or influence referrals to, furnish items or services to, or otherwise generate business for the entity if the investor uses any part of such loan to obtain the investment interest. The amount of payment to an investor in return for the investment interest must be directly proportional to the amount of the capital investment of that investor. Again, what is the capital investment? That's your signature. Put a fucking value to it. Third one, if the entity possesses investment interests that are held by either active or passive investors and is located in an underserved area, okay, so we're not going to be worried about underserved area. Whole area is underserved. Greetings, Iman. Didn't know how long you're there, but welcome.
Welcome, brother.
So let's look at the last one. As we saw earlier, Public Health, Chapter 5, Office of Inspector General, Healthcare, Department of Health and Human Services, OIG authorities, program integrity, Medicare and state healthcare programs, permissive exclusions, in other words, exceptions. And it reads the same as the last one, but we're going to look something up here. Remuneration does not include any payment made to a practitioner by a hospital or other entity where the practitioner is selling his or her practice to the hospital or other entity, so long as the following four standards are met. The period from the date of the first agreement pertaining to the sale to the completion date of the sale is not more than 3 years. So it could be 1 day. Mom goes into the hospital, 3 days. Goes in the hospital to give birth. Practitioner who is selling his or her practice will not be in a professional position after completion of the sale to make or influence referrals to or otherwise generate business for the purchasing hospital or entity for which the payment may be made under Medicare, Medicaid, or other federal health care programs. The practice being acquired must be located in a health professional shortage area as defined in departmental regulations for the practitioner's specialty area. Commencing at the time of the first agreement pertaining to the sale, the purchasing hospital entity must diligently and in good faith engage in commercially reasonable recruitment activities that may reasonably be expected to result in the recruitment of a new practitioner to take over the acquired practice within 1 year and will satisfy the conditions of the practitioner recruitment safe harbor in accordance with paragraph N of this section. The entity may not use space, including but not limited to operating and recovery room space located in or owned by any hospital investor, unless such space is leased from the hospital in accordance with a lease that complies with all the standards of the space rental safe harbor set forth in paragraph B of this section. Nor may it use equipment owned by or services provided by the hospital unless such equipment is leased in accordance with a lease that complies with the equipment rental safe harbor set forth in paragraph C of this section. And such services are provided in accordance with the contract that complies with the personal services and management contracts safe harbor set forth in paragraph D of this section. When you sign these contracts, you sign up for the management part of the contract to take care of the finances by your signature, unless you don't know what you're doing. Does that make sense? As used in Section 1128B of the Act, remuneration is not included in exchange of anything of value between or among Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services sponsored model parties under a CMS-sponsored model arrangement for which CMS has determined that this safe harbor is available if all of the following conditions are met. What's a sponsored model? CMS-sponsored model parties reasonably determine that CMS-sponsored model arrangement will advance one or more goals of the CMS-sponsored model. The exchange of value does not include CMS-sponsored model parties or other providers or suppliers to furnish medically unnecessary items or services, or reduce or limit medically necessary items or services furnished to any patient. When you enter into that hospital, moms and dads, and this brings us to the end of our thing here, I want you to understand you're entering into a management contract of a spell of illness, inpatient hospital services. You're provided inpatient hospital services under a spell of illness with safe harbor exclusion. Remember that birth certificate standards, they're not met. It's an impossibility. Absolutely, he's got to get paid for his service. So that document he gets from mom through the birth clerk, he gets to sign on it with the county registrar and mom's signature, and he gets to make money off of it. That's his certification that he provided the services where he should get remuneration. He gets remuneration. The state gets investment interest. That's the county registrar. That's how they create the money for the doctor's remuneration and the burial trust fund. No, safe harbor is well, it's immunity. Remember, it's the mom gets to drop the kid off at the fire department, and she's immune from charges. Quid pro quo. Doctor's immune from charges. He's only doing it because he's getting paid. The state's the one that's using it as an investment through an estate probate. Understand though, how can you have a probate estate saying that there's no will? In other words, somebody has deceased intestate in order to be able to administrate that estate in a probate court. You can't do it. And the court of probate has no jurisdiction to appoint an administrator of an estate of one that is living. Scott versus McNeil. Anyway, that brings us to the end of tonight's stream. Like I said, Health and Human Services, the integrity of them and their protection of that record, their integrity, the beneficiary, and the welfare thereof. That's their mission. What do you guys got to say on the way out?
So the spell of illness, is that like their excuse for, these fraudulent conveyances and, restyling a proper name? They're doing all this because they're saying, "Oh, mother's out to sea," or it's
Well, yeah, they're
possessed.
saying nobody's recognizing that we've established an estate for them, and there's certain rules that everybody should know, and evidently, they abandoned it. See, they think everybody should know this stuff, and I think they should too. It's the only way you're going to protect anybody from taking your shit, and you have to teach it to your next generation that you're granting all your property to in your wills and stuff, so they know how to protect it and pass it on too. It's the generational stuff is the one, that heirloom stuff that people have the materialistic value to, that supersedes anything else. Same thing with things like national treasures. Why do we do that? Because we're able to pass them on. How do you protect them if you don't know how to? If you don't pass on the knowledge of protecting them? Same thing as feed a man for a day if you give him a fish. Go ahead.
So, in my mind's eye, Keith, when I think about a harbor, it's just like when you look at the delivery rooms, when the woman goes in to have to give to bring forth her child, they're made up just like how a harbor almost will be made up. So the mother is going, I would consider, they consider the mother coming into harbor just like a ship to make a delivery, just like when you're in shipment, you're making a delivery. So you're embarking, there's an embarkment and there's a debarkment. So in for goods and services to be transported, delivered, and exported. Is that not so?
Well, yeah, they use the terms differently according to different jurisdictions, but that's basically what they're doing, is they're saying the same thing in different jurisdictions. Um, like you said, embark and stuff. It's similar terms, and everything works the same way. It's simply the resurrection. Remember, let me point something out to you guys. Everybody hears about resurrection. What is wrecked? As in resurrect. Resurrect. Okay. Wrecked. Etymology comes from Latin, where it has the meaning guide, rule, right, straight. Same thing throughout time. Rect angle. Same thing. It's a straight rule, guide. Literally what it means.
So, Keith, it would think the laws, they were, to me, this corporation, to me, is attempting or have attempted to change the natural laws of things from a curvature to straight lines.
I
To
don't know
me,
about that.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know about that. All I know is they're trying to um, triangulate, rectangle. They're trying to guide things, and it's not for them to guide. That's why they use the mathematical system and prisms and shapes and stuff. None of that's worth it unless you're observing it yourself in reality. And in that reality, you really don't see much in life that's curved. If you saw it close enough, many times I've seen things that look like they might be curved, but the closer I got, you see the little wave. It's the same thing with the flat Earth, globe Earth. It could be neither.
Well,
There's something
the
about
reason
it
I
that it's not globe because a globe is perfectly round, and it's something that's not flat because it's not flat.
But what I'm thinking about, even in construction, if you look at the construction of buildings, everything is made in straight lines and everything is made within a box. It's a box within a box within a box, whether it's rectangular or square or,
Yep.
it's all with boxes within boxes. And that's how I'm seeing when you're talking about this now. And the other question that I have, do you feel that these, because you made mention about the government burial, about the burial trust, so do you feel like some of these mortuary cemeteries that they're aware that there is some type of a paupers burial trust available that they can utilize in the event someone comes in and doesn't have funds? They have to have, I
No,
mean,
they
everyone that takes a license and an oath, they must know those things,
no the most
to me.
no the most imperative thing that overrides all of it there in that instance, when you have a dead corpse, is a permit to move the body. It's much like a habeas corpus. You have to have stringent rules to be able to transfer that body. This is why they get killers with ancillary charges of moving the body.
So if that is the case, that they have the habeas corpus for them to move the body, what is the coroner's position then? Just to do the examination and the autopsy? What is his position outside of, his delegations of authority and duties? Because
Well,
that,
that's
doesn't he also have the position to be like a judge or
well, that's
someone to do investigations and
well,
so forth too?
that's who it's going to directly affect is the coroner, because the coroner is going to be the one to make the decision on what to do with the body and where to send it. He's the one that's got to have the permit to move the body, or you as a family member. Guess what the body is? It's that business in all cases. Oops.
So basically, the business would be all the instrumentalities, which someone can hold. You can hold these instrumentalities in your hand and you can move them around as a carrier. So you can carry them forth, back and forth, and you can do your exchanges with them. Is that
Yep.
not so?
Yeah, that's all it is. And again, you don't have to invest in the system, nor do you even have to be passive. You could be unknowing or even volunteering it, saying, yeah, go ahead and use it for your commercial purposes. But the problem is, they do, and they use it against us. Again, they can't probate an estate of a person that's actually living, and they're doing it. And it's because the
Well,
people are willingly ignorant of the truth of these simple things.
but Keith, doesn't that include administration of estates, the probate court definition?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Probate, this is why I say if you're on probation, think about it. What they did was they administrated an estate in probate, and nobody came forth with a living will, with a will, a revocable trust that supersedes theirs by revoking their public trust, and as beneficiary deemed to be the true owner, can control and settle the estate. Do it. Oh, it's too much. Of course it is.
So
You don't want to do the research. You want somebody else to do all the paperwork for you. Hope it works. And if it doesn't, blame it on them because the paperwork didn't work because you didn't do any work either. It's not the way it works, folks. You got to put in the work. Faith is dead without its works. Go ahead, sister.
So again, Keith, I'm hearing everything you're saying. It's just my brain is, it's calculating things. And when we talk about plaintiff and we talk about defendant in a capacity, if these instrumentalities are these documentations that we're exchanging, then those capacities are being exchanged between plaintiff and defendant, because it's only the documentation that's pertinent to be moved about.
Right, that's
And you can
public
file
officer.
them.
What she's talking about, folks, is Rule 17 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, and it plainly says plaintiff, defendant, capacity, public officer, meaning you have to be a officer of the public. The implication is that you're filling out official documentation in public, and therefore you're filling a public office. Conducting trade or business, which is the performance of the functions of public office. It's that simple.
Right.
It's a
So just
presumption.
like the coroner, that's a public official. So any of these men or women in an official capacity is like you said, they're part of the public, in any documentation that they have us to utilize by application to append your signature, your signature on there. It's like, just like it says in the Bible, you're giving up, what the gentleman in the Bible gave up for a bowl of soup, and they're taking your inheritance and they're using it as a benefit to in as you investing into their corporation. So but you get no compensation for what the consideration you're giving. Make sense what I'm saying?
Correct. Correct. Jacob's ladder. Story of Jacob and Esau. You have to understand how to demand your birthright. They're stealing it from you. That's literally the estate. They don't have any power to appoint an administrator of an estate if you're alive. Just because they don't have a will on hand doesn't mean shit. Read that case, Scott versus McNeil. Your living word is your living will.
Right.
My
So
yea is
just
my
like,
yea, my nay is my nay. You're not my daddy.
right. And if you look at administer and you take the a ad, that's away from ministry. So
Yep.
they're taking away from your being able to minister, your thoughts, your practice, what you do, how
Well,
you walk in your rightfulness.
yeah, and think about the C.O.W.A.R.D.S Trust Act of 1666. This is when the church handed over the records to the municipality. Same thing she was just talking about. They handed it over to them to administer. They were no longer going to minister the word to their people, their congregation. They were going to hand all the records over to the municipality so that they could protect them and regulate them, and they would direct the church what the people should do. That's 501c3, by the way.
Yeah. So, Brother Keith, if these Mormons are supposed to be the one in charge of recordation or recording documents for, say, let's say people of the land, are they the official record keeper? Is that something that we should further investigate?
It is something that we should certainly start taking responsibility of when we start handing those records over to political bodies that are 2, 3, 4, and they keep their own records and then consolidate them in a place like a Library of Congress or something. And then there's some kind of war. Doesn't matter if it's Civil War or international war somewhere else. And they come and, like I said, they start going for those national treasures. They hit the important places first. And what better way to destroy a country than to destroy its history? We have to realize we've given up a lot of responsibility, and that is not only just letting them keep records, but letting those lies exist.
Well, see, Brother Keith, I agree with everything you say because I was thinking earlier, we have these young men and young women coming up nowadays. These are the future generations. And one of the things I'm realizing is that, it's when at the one time when they had these parents organizing marriages for their daughters or their sons, to me that was more beneficial. But then I'm seeing right now for these young people going forward, if you don't have a young man and a young woman in equal station, meaning they have equal ambition, they have equal goals, they have equal admiration, equal knowledge, and if someone is beneath them, if they get involved with someone beneath them, it's like being unevenly yoked. So to me, when a young man and a young woman is coming together, you have to take in consideration, okay, I have a certain level of knowledge, I have a certain ambition, I have certain goals and aspirations. I would like to have someone equally having those same things that I aspire to be, because then you can see the man can overstand the woman and the woman can overstand. To me, when you come together, you do have the meeting of the minds. I can see that occurring. I don't
Yeah,
know,
and
tell me.
and that's part of the problem with the relationships that we have today and of the old times, quite different. We have a much more commercial aesthetic to all relationships today, much deeper ingrained to be materialistic. Anyway, with that, John, you got anything on the way out?
No, I'm good, Brother Keith.
All right. Well, thank everybody for joining us. And for me, you guys know me. I love you, but I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back. I say I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you don't respect me. And that's on you. So may God bless you and have a good night. See you next time.